Hello, I'm Dave Greenfield. Good to meet everybody. I'm going to give you a little bit of a primer on generative AI. I'll go through the agenda in just a minute, but a little bit more background about myself. So I'm one of the two co-founders of a boutique consulting firm called Gen AI Partners. And my background, I've worked in the software industry for, I guess, 20 plus years at some small companies like Knip and Komodo Health, as well as some larger public companies like FactSet and Twitter and Viva. And academically, I've kind of had a background in finance and computer science. So a bit of background on kind of where I came from as a company, just some of the stuff we focus on and where our areas of expertise are. So we do kind of a broader range of AI related services for businesses. So we do training across strategy, product, and engineering organizations. We do kind of AI strategy and advisory for folks and their products and help them optimize workflows around AI. And then we do software development with kind of AI integrated features. And so that's kind of the background and area of emphasis. We'll do a light touch on some topics for AI in this seminar around legal and some of those things, but I think there's a later session specifically around AI legal concerns, so we won't go too much in depth there and focus a little bit more on kind of a survey of what AI is and some of the techniques you can use it to help your business today. And so, yeah, kind of 4 parts to the session today. So we'll do kind of a quick intro to generative AI to make sure everybody can understand some of the definitions and key terms and see some of the kind of latest and greatest examples of what we see in the ecosystem, and then talk a little bit about how you can integrate AI into your business and different techniques there. And then kind of a short section talking about some of the new and emerging business risks related to AI. And then we'll open it up for question and answer at the end, which, kind of wherever you guys want to take it on questions, comments from the presentation, or kind of burning questions that you guys have in the back of your mind. So we'll start with a kind of overall intro to AI, and with the shorter session, we as a company do some of these sessions and run for 5 or 6 hours. So we kind of picked the kind of higher level intro topics to cover today to give folks on the call just a little bit of background and understanding, and then give you guys a chance to ask questions where your interests lie. I guess just first to set the stage, I think probably everybody's heard more about AI in the last 6 months than you have probably in the rest of your life combined. And the reason why I think as some of the new technologies have emerged, I think more and more industry experts and folks who have been around for many cycles kind of have seen, and it happens periodically. I think obviously a number of us are around pre-internet, pre-cell phone, a lot of kind of life-changing technologies, and a lot of the experts kind of agree that generative AI is going to be one of those technologies that changes how we operate on a day-to-day basis, both in business and personal life, and really across a broad spectrum of industries and functions. And I saw kind of this quote from Bill Gates, as OpenAI and some of those products were coming to market, and he kind of recognized and kind of the importance and significance of some of the advances. And I think the aha moment for him was, as he mentioned, kind of going through, and as they do the testing for new models, they have them take a number of kind of human performance exams. And one of the thresholds they had struggled with for a while was on the AP exams, and it got to a point with the new iteration where they got 59 out of 60 correct on the AP exam. And that's really, I think, one of the threshold points for AI in general, is as it gets near meeting or exceeding human performance, it goes from kind of academic into the mainstream, because it becomes a lot of practical applications, and not the most useful application to be taking the AP bio test unless you're a high school junior or senior, but still one that I think could easily see how it could be extended to a lot of other functionality there. And he called it the most important advance since the graphical user interface. And I think that's a good analogy, because it's one that will really change how people and computers interact with each other, and in some cases machines to machines, and in some cases people to people, with kind of AI kind of serving as an assistant. And the part of the reason why people are so excited about generative AI, there's really like a couple different ways where you see it impacting everyday life and business. So I think a huge piece on operational efficiency. So there's still many tasks in business that are kind of too complex or too abstract for kind of rules-based automation or processing to kind of impact or take away some of the burden. And a lot of those tend to be kind of the more monotonous and menial tasks that people don't like doing. So it's kind of a benefit there that's unintended. It does create kind of a new way for people to interact with computers. So for folks who have used ChatGPT, it's much different in the way that you're able to kind of speak in normal language without having to learn much about different structures or coding or any kind of new language like that. And it's kind of creating new ways of connecting people to information. And so a lot of us, it's been a while now, I think, since Google and some of the other search technologies have been around, and we've kind of gotten used to that being how we interact with information on the internet and our computers. And I think this is opening up kind of new possible ways for people and information to connect. And the last one, we won't talk as much about automation, but I think there's a lot of folks already focused on what can we do that was previously kind of had to be routed to people that we can now kind of automate and use AI for decision making and processing there. So I guess just to level set, you hear the term AI or generative AI. So just wanted to start with kind of defining AI and generative AI and machine learning, just to make sure everybody has kind of an understanding of kind of how those broad level terms fit together. And they're all related. And it's funny, I remember actually when I was in grad school, took a course on AI, and they kind of started off in a similar way. And you realize you use a lot of these terms, and you don't actually know kind of even the broad level meaning sometimes, and sometimes we kind of use them interchangeably for things where they don't necessarily fit in. But just to quickly define, artificial intelligence is really kind of like a broad class of algorithms, and there's been different artificial intelligence around for a long time, 50, 70 years or so, really since the advent of the early computers. And everything really that you can do to kind of mimic human behavior using a machine can be classified as artificial intelligence. You may hear the term AGI, or artificial generalized intelligence. That's kind of come into play a lot as AI is expanded and getting capable. And that kind of talks about the ability for AI to learn and be independent. And so that's kind of a separate topic. But artificial intelligence as a whole can do anything and use any type of technique. So a lot of the early machines use decision-making heuristics or scoring mechanisms to make decisions. I think there was a lot of work in game playing. I think probably a number of us have seen the chess demonstrations, or this is I think Go in the picture there. So a lot of artificial intelligence really has nothing to do with the latest wave from a functional standpoint, but kind of related in kind of the broad category. Another one, kind of machine learning, is kind of broad category of algorithms, and really speaks to anything where you're using acquired data from real life events, or any kind of data that's been captured from observations, and using that to create a model for prediction or decision making or classification. And so just on this slide, just a couple examples where kind of well known. So the one on the left is really kind of an academic problem where you can use machine learning to, based on the petal width and petal length of flowers, classify which type of iris they are. Given a new measurement, you can sort of see there that's meant to be the new measurement, and you can create an algorithm that's kind of trained off of your observations and classify there. A lot of us interact with machine learning on a day-to-day basis and don't necessarily even realize it. So I think the Netflix example, and now there's much to some of our dismay, eight or nine streaming services that we all have access to, that all have different recommendations and movie libraries and TV libraries, but they all kind of work off of machine learning when you get to the pages that are kind of suggested for you, or recommended movies or recommended shows. And they work by taking all of the data that's collected from the broad set of users and then your individual user base, and creating an algorithm that can predict which ones you're most likely to enjoy. And so anything that really fits in that category of collecting data and then using it to make decisions kind of fits into the machine learning category. And then generative AI is really, kind of sits in the middle of those two. So with generative AI, you're creating an AI system that's meant to mimic, really a number of kind of human behaviors, creative behaviors, or kind of textual behaviors, like writing or image creation or music, which will show some of the examples there. And it starts with kind of this massive training process where they gather text or images or music from open sources. There's some debate in that, which we'll touch on a little bit later. And then they go through a process to capture the information and create a model that can be used to predict questions there. And the other kind of defining characteristic of generative AI is that it has very open-ended response type. So for ChatGPT or other systems like that, in the examples kind of on the machine learning side, it really just recommends one specific thing or makes one specific decision point. With generative AI, it's really an open-ended response. So you can generate any type of image, or you can generate any text based on the direction that you're given to the model there. So, and so just a quick example, although I probably shouldn't have. I found one spot that ChatGPT does struggle with is creating funny jokes, but just an example where you really can prompt anything you want within AI. And so I gave it the task of writing a joke for business leaders in an AI webinar, making sure it's funny. And so the joke it came up with was, why did AI go to business school? And the response is because it wanted to improve its neural networking skills, and then threw in a couple emojis for good measure. So I don't know if it's going to replace any comedians anytime soon, but just kind of a good example of, really can capture a lot of the nuance of human language, and doesn't really, we'll go through a second, like a little bit of how it works, doesn't really understand from a human stance, the concept of humor, but it's able to kind of mimic directions around humor, more complex concepts that I think in previous iterations of kind of language creation models weren't able to do. So a couple other new terms and kind of key terms around language models. So you'll probably hear the term large language models. There isn't really a set cutoff on what makes large, though. They've grown from millions of kind of dimensions of the model to billions and bordering on trillions now. So the ones we have in the large language model category are massive now and require highly specialized computers, actually creating a bit of a shortage and crisis of chip supply, which is good if you're an NVIDIA shareholder, but not necessarily good if you're a company trying to stock up on the computers needed to run some of these models. You may hear the term foundational models. It's kind of another term people are using to refer to the kind of commercialized large language models like GPT or Google's Palm model. You may hear the term model parameter. So that's kind of the generalized term around the size or complexity of the model. So when they talk about something being 170 billion parameter model, it just measures kind of how complex it is versus something where it's a 13 billion model or parameter model, which has a much smaller space to make predictions and can run faster on a smaller machine, but is kind of less complex than you get on the high end of things. Kind of two new terms that kind of come in around as people start using language models. So you may hear the term hallucination or language model hallucination. I think it's that's one thing that's kind of both a feature and a bug of language models. So they don't work like traditional systems where they're pulling information from a database. They kind of predict a realistic response, but in some cases that causes them to create responses that are factually not true, even if they may seem true. And then the last one, kind of prompt engineering. So there's kind of a new skill set emerging. In some cases, kind of human assembly. In some cases, using programming techniques to kind of put together the prompts or inputs to language models that can kind of best create the model to respond in a way that meets the needs of the user. And so that's becoming a more and more valuable skill set. And as the usage kind of expands, there's more and more best practices and different techniques that people are learning to kind of guide the machine, or in some cases even kind of trick the machine a little bit to create a response that's successful. So how does a large language model work? You may not care as much about the kind of deep nuts and bolts, but I do think it's good as you use some of these tools to have some understanding, because I think understanding the background of how they work gives you a lot more intuition on what they're good at and what they're not good at. And so you may notice if you use ChatGPT that it generates the response sequentially, so it doesn't kind of pop out of nowhere with a complicated response. It kind of fills in, although quicker and quicker these days. So it's definitely filling in faster than humans can read or definitely speak. But they kind of work one word at a time. So they'll go through and based on the prompt, kind of predict what the first word of the response is, and then second word, and so on and so forth, and kind of form a response, both using the prompt and then as it's generating the kind of response to date to figure out what's the best fit for next. And then they have kind of settings around variability. So in this example, you show kind of the probability. They have settings that give it some variation to let it perform better on creative tasks. We'll go through an example of that in a minute. And then kind of one other piece to notice, it's a little bit more complex than kind of the straight probability. Won't dive too deep into this, but it basically uses what they call kind of another term you kind of may see as kind of an attention mechanism, which basically means when it's evaluating what the next word should be, it doesn't just say like, okay, over the internet the most common word is capes, so it should be capes. It creates a kind of layered scoring to say, based on these 100 different factors, it gives you a ranking of potential next words. And so that was important actually from a academic standpoint, because there was cases where the prior to that, the language models had a lot of difficulty with words or phrases where they can have different meanings in different contexts, since it would be kind of always the dominant context that would prevail. So maybe a little bit in the weeds, but kind of important to understand some of the plumbing on how they work. And really the implication is that like you can actually trick this to do better responses by kind of how you ask for the response and how you sequence it. And then some things like mathematical calculations where it will respond, it may not necessarily be good at because it's not actually using any thought or calculation engine, at least in a kind of core language model itself. And so just a quick example, again, so it's just really looking at kind of sequential probabilities, which it doesn't seem like it as you go. I think the tendency even as you work with these models a lot is to kind of mentally picture them thinking about the response and then crafting something kind of as a complete concept, but that's not really how it goes. So it kind of takes a look at it. And so you can imagine as you go through each word, you could have a set of probabilities of what could go next. So obviously something like the has a pretty open-ended set of probabilities, could go a lot of different directions. But if you kind of go through the best, you start to get more dominant trends. This one has a 15% probability of this set. We'll skip ahead a little bit. And so as you continue, and if you kind of keep picking the most likely chains, you can see it forms a sentence and starts to lean towards patterns and outputs that are familiar to us, or at least familiar to the training data that you have. And so you would end up with kind of the sentence, the best things in life are free, which is, I think, a saying that most of us have heard of and really can be determined by kind of sequential probability and following some of the choices along the way. And in the actual models, you can add variability, so you can go down a number of different paths, which is why as you use some of the tools, you may see it, give it the same input and not see the same response every single time. I just want to touch a little bit too. Behind the scenes, it does work. Even besides just the probabilities, it works by converting all of the text to quantitative representations of text. And so because of that, we're actually seeing kind of similar advances across a lot of mediums, because a lot of the techniques all work off of kind of transformed versions. So images can kind of get converted to large matrices of numbers, as well as kind of video and music, all of the stuff that's been digitized over the last 20, 30, 40 years really works off of these different numerical patterns from a computer perspective. And so that's why we're seeing kind of this rapid enhancement across mediums. And so you may have also seen some of the image generators. So this one is from Midjourney, which is one of the more popular image generators out there, which allows you to kind of take a descriptive phrase and it'll generate an image for you. And it's roughly a minute. It gives you, the Midjourney works, gives you 3 or 4 different options, and you can pick to modify or enlarge in some of them. A couple other companies, so OpenAI has a model DALL-E on images, and then Adobe's kind of entered into that space as well. Adobe being a little bit more conservative about training the models using copyrighted materials. But you can see it generates very photorealistic images if that's where you prompt it, though not always factually accurate. I think you could probably find 4 or 5 geographically incorrect, if not more, things about this image, when you really dig into it. And so again, there's becoming a whole art around prompt engineering for images to make sure you can control the lighting as well as all the composure parts of it. Another area I think that's been advancing quickly and kind of getting out there, and we'll show kind of a couple example videos. But this one is, the video as a whole is a little bit slower, but I think targeted segments are doing better. So I'll play this one, which shows from a company called Synthesia. They do kind of auto-animated avatars and generated voices that sit on top of them. So they're kind of one of the leaders in that space.
Have you ever recorded your own voice and couldn't handle the cringe when listening to it? Many people feel the same way as you, but I just can't relate. Probably because I am not human. I'm Olivia, an AI avatar created using Synthesia Studio. I speak using text-to-speech technology, and today I will show you how you too can leverage that technology to avoid the cringe.
So I think still a little bit. I don't know if you'd be completely fooled, but in some cases they're getting pretty close on being able to mimic it. I think a lot of people are using these, really, especially for recording things that change frequently, like product instructional videos or voiceovers or trainings to have a complement. Where just historically, there may have been no way to have budget to kind of have a studio recording to go along with that stuff. Or in cases where it's kind of highly personalized content and you want a video that really speaks to a single consumer or small set of consumers pretty well. So I know I've seen more of the kind of personalized generated ads. I think over the next year or two we'll start getting a ton of ads in our email that are kind of similar in context to this.
Have you ever recorded your own?
Another area, kind of related, but they now kind of have tools that can either generate from kind of a fixed toolbox of voices or give you the ability to clone your own voice. So this is kind of one example there. Where
Speechify has revolutionized my productivity with its custom text-to-speech voices. Partnering with Speechify allowed me to clone my own voice, making it faster than ever to create new audio and video content.
We'll stop it there. So kind of an example, I thought it seemed pretty close, and really, I think we'll be able to share the stack. If not, I can find a way to post some of that stuff afterwards. But you can easily go on, record about 30 seconds of your own speech, and it is able to create a copy quickly of kind of your own voice there. And then the last one, video. Video is a little bit more difficult just because of the scale, but they're starting to get kind of snippets, and they tend to be a little bit surrealistic in some cases. I think there's a huge challenge on generating a sequence of images and not creating any choppiness or jerkiness, and having consistency among kind of on a frame to frame basis. But that's advancing pretty quickly too. So I expect to see more and more of that over the next couple of years. And the last one, kind of music. So this is an example from Ava. I think it's pronounced right. I don't know if they pronounce it Ava, but you can also, it's another one you can go on their website and and kind of play around and create your own composition. we'll pause there. But I've gone through, and it's interesting to play around. They let you basically pick styles and patterns and lengths, and then they couple it with a audio editor that allows you to take snippets of it or apply After Effects. Like I'm not an experienced audio editor, but like some of the audio toolkits out there. So kind of the combination, and I guess that's a good thing to reference. A lot of these tools are being set up in a way that they're designed to kind of assist kind of humans in generating and creating more quickly. And so I think that's been kind of the main design pattern from a product perspective for a lot of these AI tools. So moving on, so that hopefully that was a good kind of sampling of what's out there in the ecosystem. So we want to switch gears and talk about kind of AI and how you can use it to kind of help your business and the different ways that you can adopt AI. And so really, like, this is kind of from a McKinsey study that came out a couple months ago. Again, they kind of expect, and I did a lot of research breaking out the impact of AI into 63 kind of discrete use cases. And I think if you search online for McKinsey AI study, and I think they make you fill out a form, but you can get a kind of full copy of the PDF report, from McKinsey. It's pretty detailed in terms of kind of how it breaks everything out. But they kind of broke it out by function, but it was pretty broad impact, across the functions. And then this may be a little bit tough to read, but then it's similarly across industries, they kind of expect, kind of massive impact for AI. And so that begs the question of, how, what do we actually do to recognize some of that impact? And there's really like two main broad categories, I think, where people are benefiting from AI in their business. So one is through kind of increased efficiency. So are there tools that can rapidly accelerate certain tasks or workflows, or through improved quality of work? So are there things that are enabled that now you can do better, or things that were not possible before that you can do now more feasibly? So for example, the voiceovers, right, where you may not have been able to have video overviews of your products before that you could put in front of clients, and now you have kind of that capability there. And there's probably three main ways that we see that people are actually accessing those from a tactical standpoint. And so I'll go through the first two. So I think the first two being, a ton of software vendors in the ecosystem are integrating AI models from commercial vendors, or creating their own models and integrating it within existing business software. So we'll go through a couple examples of some of the more exciting ones there. And then I think probably a number of folks have already started doing that, but there's a lot of good ways you can use the AI assistants and tools. And so I'll go through kind of two or three of my favorite techniques there, favorite areas where kind of I use ChatGPT, or sometimes I use Anthropic, which is another kind of large competitor to OpenAI as well. And then the last one, which we won't really talk to today because it kind of gets into the technical weeds, but there's a lot of, especially on the enterprise side, process automation with AI that's kind of happening out there, where a lot of stuff that had complex workflows that got routed to human agents, there's more potential to take on more of the process, at least with an automated AI processor agent. So this is kind of stole some art from Salesforce. They've been one of the companies that's I'd say more all in on adopting AI across their product suite, within the CRM and some of the other products that they offer. So we'll give kind of some examples there. Sales is one of the areas and one of the functions that I think McKinsey and others have scored high as being kind of highly impacted. I think there's a ton of obviously human communication that's in some cases kind of repetitive, or takes a lot of time to pull in data from a lot of sources. So one of the areas is kind of integrating AI into kind of the email systems and CRM that lets salespeople automatically draft kind of very human-like emails that may reference product subscriptions or data or past meetings or future appointments. So really just simplify the communication point. A lot of them have more targeted templates too. So it's like, I want to introduce you to this product, do a product introduction, or ways to click in and kind of control the inputs of the email. They're also adding a lot more. These have been a little bit more behind the scenes from what we've seen, but I expect kind of more visibility on these, especially as they improve or more people adopt. So this is actually screenshots from Zoom IQ. So they do a lot of analysis. I actually don't know if this is available by default or if you have to pay extra for it, but which is kind of a decision on a lot of the software. Some of them they're selling as an add-on, some of them they kind of package in, but you probably can't see the details here. But basically, after a call, it gives you a number of metrics like what's the longest monologue you had in there, what are the kind of what was your talk speed, what was your patience, and then some more abstract concepts which would have not been possible before, like how many engaging questions did you ask during the conversation, what are the next steps. And this will be controversial, but they're starting to do kind of team-based ranking for managers as well too. So this is kind of an example where you can look at your team once they capture all of these metrics, and you can look at, like, for your whole sales team, how many good questions do they ask on a call. So I'm sure that'll be an interesting dynamic as that gets rolled out more broadly to the kind of diverse sales teams. And then another area, I think again, kind of on the kind of more creative, more kind of typically human side, really on the marketing front. There's a number of tools that have emerged to kind of help use AI to accelerate the marketing copy side of things. And then the image tools, I think, are emerging pretty quickly as well too. So this example on the left is kind of from an image tool where it lets you basically load canned stock photography of your product, and then use AI to generate backgrounds and surrounding objects and compose them in a way that creates a seamless ad or kind of product image. So some of those tools I think will kind of just get integrated into our existing workflows. I know Google and Google Workspace and their editors have added AI assistants across the board, and Microsoft has done the same. And I think more and more of the image editors like Adobe Photoshop and those types of tools are also adding kind of AI generation components for textures or objects. Another area in marketing, which I think folks are focused on using generative AI is kind of analyzing, the content and linking it up to kind of SEO optimization. So if you work kind of in that field, or have struggled, and I think in some cases the biggest value is areas where, like, you may not know how to do anything with SEO or search engine optimization, and now some of these tools will emerge that kind of do a lot more for you. So that'll help. Kind of those are, in my mind, some of the most kind of opportunistic areas to use AI, where you've been kind of afraid to approach them or not able to approach before because of lack of knowledge. And I'll talk about that, I guess, a little bit more as we get into some of the ChatGPT techniques. And I think the last big area where it's moving quickly and being rolled out in kind of the business tools is in a customer support platform. So one more short video here. This is from Intercom, who's kind of a larger provider of kind of online customer service platforms. So I'll show that the first 15-20 seconds quickly.
Intercom's AI-assisted conversation summaries enable support agents to quickly hand over any issue to another teammate. With just one click, this new technology enables a level of automated summarization not possible before, enabling support agents to quickly pick up exactly where a previous agent left off, with no time wasted writing up or reading through an entire issue for extra context.
That's kind of showing, kind of how it's supporting an agent flow for large-scale customer service agents. The other big area, I think, is kind of in the advancement of self-service tools. So this is, again, another example from Intercom. They're kind of targeting more the kind of larger enterprise space. Kind of listed another company here that kind of does something similar. If you wanted to create like a ChatGPT like bot, they start as low as kind of $20 per month, where you can kind of have it load your website copy and create an embedded version of a chat bot that can answer based on all the content that you have. And so it's creating a much different paradigm on these kind of self-service tools for businesses, where even for something like a restaurant, where you may want to load your menu in hours and some background around the restaurant, you can do that for for tens of dollars per month and get something up and running that can help answer common questions from your customers. And then as some of those systems mature too, it also has the benefit of be able to extract insights and comments from what people ask. So if people are always asking about, to continue on the restaurant example, people are always asking about gluten-free foods or some category, you could get those types of insights and make it more obvious on your website. So kind of the second category, again, of places where I think you can use AI now to kind of help their business. So I think using the agents as part of your workflow. So ChatGPT being the most well-known one. I think Google also has their Bard product, and again, Anthropic has their product called Claude, and there's probably 3 or 4 other relatively large companies launching their own kind of general agents like ChatGPT. I personally use ChatGPT every day, multiple times per day, and it's starting to get to a point where it's like hard to imagine not having it. So I'll go through a couple of ways. I typically lean on ChatGPT, kind of as examples. I think kind of 3 areas where I kind of immediately go into ChatGPT or one of the other AI tools. Really, like when you're starting on something, kind of planning wise, that's a little bit abstract, and especially if it's areas like outside of your core expertise, you may not even have enough knowledge or information to kind of completely guide what you want there. But I find you're able to have it, create outlines for you that can really like accelerate your planning on some of those cases. So we'll go through an example there. I think checking your work or enhancing ideas. So if you have something that's nearly completed and you want to analyze it, I think it's a great tool for that. And then I think in more open-ended brainstorming too, it can give you kind of a rapid, 20, 30 ideas around a topic. And so we'll do kind of quick example of each one of those. So the first one, I think, I'm not definitely a marketing professional. I can't come up with a hypothetical example here, but, we definitely use it, for kind of helping brainstorm some of the marketing topics and tactics for our business. We rarely use it verbatim, but I think it's almost always useful in kind of surfacing new ideas and often providing more structure to the thought process. And I'd say the tips I have is like the more context and information you can give about your business and kind of your objectives for whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, and even providing in some cases like a framework for success. So in this case, it's a kind of ice cream shop, kind of gave an instruction on reaching consumers of a certain age group, kind of an overall budget, and kind of noted we wanted to reach both existing customers and attract new customers. And so giving that information really gives it a lot more context to provide a good response there. And we won't go too in depth, but you can kind of see it gives you, let's see, make sure I'm sharing that up. It'll give you, a response, that's pretty detailed plan. I wouldn't trust it too much on like knowing how to best allocate the budget, but gives you some good examples. And then in each category talks about, potential content you can do, partnership ideas, email marketing, what you could actually like focus your email marketing on. And again, it's not necessarily revolutionary ideas if you're a professional marketer, but for someone who's not an experienced marketer, it wouldn't necessarily know to think about maybe loyalty programs or look into, some of these more nuanced ideas that, are kind of easily spit out with pretty minimal preparation. So the second piece, and I think kind of as we're reviewing this, really thought, to mention, you can do this kind of both ways. So it could be your own work, or, a lot of times as a business owner, you get proposals from other people or, contracts or outlines to read through. So whether it's something you've created or something that you're receiving from a kind of partner or vendor, it can be huge to, be able to take parts of that, or sometimes even the whole thing, and plug it into some of these tools and ask specific questions. I would say the more you can break it up and be specific, the more successful you will be on those. And if you ask for like specific improvements, I think you'll kind of get what you asked for there. So that's kind of another area I think where it can save a lot of time if somebody sends you a 10-page document that you just need the 1 or 2 key points, you can easily put that in and summarize. Or if you just want to know about, did they mention anything about pricing or kind of next steps, you can put those in and not have to read through the whole thing and save yourself 20, 30 minutes. And then the last one, more open-ended topics, like brainstorming. So kind of this example, product naming, and sometimes it's helpful to like go one step above. So instead of asking for the names themselves, like I did in this case, we had kind of a hypothetical example of, a monthly toy kit for children and asked it for, 10 different potential names. If you want to do the naming yourself and kind of combine, you can also ask for like, what are 20 words that, that invoke the creativity, learning, and fun in this example. And so I find it really useful for those because I think sometimes, your minds get kind of stuck as humans when you're thinking about it, as you get kind of stuck on 1 or 2 things, and it's hard to open up as quickly as some of the AI tools can. And then sometimes seeing like a generalized list like this will kind of help trigger something in your mind that points you in a direction that you wouldn't have been able to get to before. So those are kind of 3 key areas I think where I use ChatGPT every day. I kind of use a probably 80-20 split of ChatGPT and Anthropic. They have slightly different styles and strengths and weaknesses. Mostly Anthropic can take much longer input. So if I have 50, 60 page documents that I'm looking at that I need to get something out of, I'll use that more frequently. And then the last part we'll cover quickly and then open up for questions. Just want to touch a little bit. So it's so much opportunity, but with some of the opportunity does come with some risks for the business. So I'd say the first thing that people, I think for the most part, have been probably more wary than they need to be, but I think it is still a risk worth noting is kind of over reliance or situational misuse of AI in business processes. So give kind of an example of something that's a little more cutting edge and riskier in a minute. I would say probably the one that triggers people the most, the examples I showed is like the voice cloning, because I think it's almost too easy to make audio that sounds like someone else, or in some cases, video and audio that looks like someone else. I think it was Tom Hanks just came out earlier this week and talked about him being a younger version of himself being used with AI in a dental ad that he had nothing to do with. So there's definitely more opportunity for kind of advanced fraud and copying. And then the last one again, which we'll just kind of quickly note, but I think there's going to be a future session on, is everything's happened so quickly and it's pushing the boundaries from a legal stance pretty far beyond what they have been. So it's definitely not stabilized in terms of a couple points on the legal front. So we're a little low on time. We'll give 20 seconds of this example, but I'd say in most cases, like most of the business use is still kind of what they call human in the loop. So the human is ultimately responsible for reviewing what's produced by AI and vetting it and making sure it doesn't create any negative impact. But this is kind of a case. This company Air AI is rolling out completely AI phone agents. So I'll play about 20 seconds.
Oh.
Hey, James.
Yeah, who's this?
Hey, James. It's Alexander from Tesla Motors. How's your day going so far?
It's going pretty good, my man. How about yourself? You said from Tesla, right? It's the car company?
Yeah, that's right. I'm calling from Tesla Motors, the car company.
So you can find the full one. We don't have quite enough time to go through, but their product will kind of have these agents call customers on behalf and conduct a full conversation and towards a specific objective. This is their sales video, so it works pretty crisply in that. I've heard mixed reviews of whether it actually works in practice, but I would say things like this where there's really no opportunity for human invention. Even in the demo, the pauses are a little bit long and unnatural. I think that's been some of the critique on these, is sometimes they're still a little bit too slow, in terms of how they respond. And then there's a possibility they kind of go off on a tangent and don't get back to the conversation or task at hand.
Did you?
Oh,
Sorry about that. We won't go into too much in detail, but I think we've all gotten the emails and scam calls, trying to fish out financial information, other kind of trick other ways into gaining access to business accounts. I think the downside of having all of this tools to create human-like communications is that both the kind of clone voices and emails, it's going to enable kind of scammers to operate at a much higher scale and with a much higher level of realism that they have in the past. So it's definitely something to be on the watch for. Now this is accessible to everybody. The providers themselves are putting more and more in place to have guardrails around that, but it's always a kind of a race on those types of things, of the guardrails, and then there'll be other providers that don't put the guardrails in that kind of enable some of that community of bad actors. And then the last one, I think, just to quickly note, and then we'll jump into Q&A. There's a number of areas where the legal environment is, I'd say, uncertain or unsettled. So I think both on the outputs of AI and the inputs for creating models. So on the output side, probably two big questions that kind of come up is, what's copyrightable and what's not. I think they have pretty strongly leaned towards completely machine created outputs being not copyrightable and staying kind of with the copyright requirement being a human created work. But then I think it becomes gray as you do small modifications, or if it's a human guided filters or other things afterwards, that when does it go from being kind of considered machine created to human created. And then from a liability perspective, right, if there are cases where creates damaging statements or statements that lead people to do criminal activities or support them in their criminal activity, I think there's like unclear decisions on liability there. And then on the inputs, there's been a lot of, I think, public cases where they've aggressively taken content from the web to train both the text and image models, and so more content owners are pushing back against that. So a couple of the examples, Sarah Silverman had sued OpenAI, or has an open case, and New York Times, I think, also came out and kind of explicitly changed their terms of service to exclude use in model training. And so really all of the major providers have kind of open lawsuits or pending lawsuits around kind of the use of AI for the inputs, and I expect they'll work it out, but it's obviously a risk as you use those providers, that the service could change, or they're put in a tenuous situation because of those legal cases. And so we'll pause there, open it up for kind of questions, discussions. Hopefully that was a useful overview. It's kind of the 10,000 foot view of what AI is and some of the places we're seeing it used in the ecosystem, but happy to answer specific questions people have on really any topic related to AI and business adoption. So first one, regarding SEO optimization, how can AI understand what online visitors want to improve and website content to boost search ranking user experience? So I guess one of the things we didn't get a chance to cover, the language models themselves are kind of bounded to a very large set of training data, but it's also kind of static, so it doesn't know necessarily what happened yesterday at all. And if you ask about it, they'll explicitly say they don't. Although now they're starting to kind of give AI a way to reach out to other data sources. So in the case of SEO, they can pull in data via APIs to some of the trending terms or discussions or keyword ranks that Google makes available through their products. So you can tie in kind of the data together, and then you have the language model kind of create recommendations, based on if it knows what your business is or what your copy is, and then what the trends are. It can kind of marry the two together and kind of help create scoring and ranking there. In terms of like knowing what visitors want, again, you're going to kind of need data sources and some of the how people behave on the website. It could make a guess on there, but I don't know if it's necessarily the most efficient tool to say, okay, not only are we going to talk about this, it is more, I think, primarily just pulling in the data around keyword rankings and costs, and then marrying it with the content that you have. Typical AI budget for a small business with 1 million in revenues. That's a good question. It's like I don't know if there's a typical yet. I think we obviously deal with a lot of folks as a consultant who are spending money on AI. I think we see a mix. I don't know if everybody even has an AI budget. I expect that'll change a little bit next year. And in some cases, like we saw, that's being integrated into your existing tool. So it's like if you have Salesforce and they add in the AI tools, it may not necessarily even come out of the AI budget. I would say a lot of the personal tools are relatively cheap. So even the pro version of OpenAI, is only $20 a month, and Midjourney I think is in that range too, $10-$15 a month per user. So you can equip a team at a small business for $50 a month with fairly good tooling on that piece per user. Sorry about that. I think I was trying to click over to comments, see if there's any more. I got booted for a second. What am I most excited about the future of AI in business? It's interesting. I was at a conference maybe this was 3-4 months ago, focused on marketing and brand use cases for AI, and that segment is exciting. But what was most exciting to me is they had somebody who kind of ran brand at Facebook, who runs his own agency now, and he brought up a really good point, which was that in a lot of cases, people are really focused on AI can do these things I don't want to do, or it's just a double-sided sword, right? Of like, or people where you could take jobs or take away functions. But he brought up a good point. What's most exciting to him is just kind of the ability to raise the bar, and really on two perspectives, right? Like the level of the best work, potentially goes up, especially from a marketing perspective, as you have all these tools to more rapidly create images, video. So you get to see the best work be the best, and then on the lower part, if you create 100 pieces of marketing content, a year, one of them is going to be the worst, right? And so the quality of your worst stuff is probably also likely to go up. So I think to me the like improvement in overall quality of output is probably the most exciting thing. What roles are done by employees that are most likely to replace? Well, I'd say like one of the big things why it has been pretty controversial is like a lot of tech and automation enhancements are really kind of more manufacturing, blue collar, where I think this is somewhat of a more focused around kind of the thought and white collar work. So it's different segment of people who are coming in. I would say to the examples we gave, the areas where it's more likely to be replaced are ones where it's, I'd say, very repetitive, but not necessarily kind of rules based. So creating kind of summaries or marketing copy that's very bland or generic, that's very formulaic. I think that's areas that would be completely replaced. I think the stuff that's more complex is most likely, and what we've seen so far, is most likely to be augmented rather than replaced. So giving people better tools to do their jobs rather than say, okay, we don't do it, which can be a form of replacement in the sense that, like, if you need 5 people to do what you needed 10 people to do last week, then obviously you have a need for five less roles in those constructs. Is there data on resistance or disapproval of AI by consumers? For example, not sure. I haven't seen data on that. I mean, I think anecdotally we see a lot of backlash of this sounds too generic or sounds too robotic. I haven't seen data on kind of where people. I would say if anything's going to press it, it's going to be the next upcoming election cycle. I think it'll be kind of the election cycle of AI, where we do see a ton of automated outreach using AI-driven components. Though I wouldn't say it's been not annoying in the past, all the robocalling and other recorded messages you get. So it may be just a little bit of a different flavor on that. We'll see a lot more on that. And one other note is like they actually have done a lot to try to automate detection of AI outputs so that you could, either through watermarks or through algorithms, but most of them have not been very successful so far. But it is an area where people are looking at, because I think for a number of reasons, there's concern about all of this content proliferating society that, we're not able to tell if it was generated by people or AI. ChatGPT fabricates the existence of certain packages with generating code. There are examples of many other hallucinations. So yeah, I do a decent amount of coding myself. Yeah, I do find, I'd say less so than packages, but there's a number of challenges with coding in general that are problematic. So it doesn't handle versioning, discrete versioning very well. So if you use Python 2 and then use Python 3, it gets a lot more granular than that. We'll keep it high level for the folks on the call. You can get an answer that's a blend of syntax from different versions. I think the biggest thing, so really just about a month ago, OpenAI kind of made their fine tuning, which is kind of model customization available broadly. So I think a lot of the advancements around code are really creating kind of submodels for specific problems. So there's already a number that's out there for generating valid SQL code. And so that's one big area. And then the other big piece is just trying to figure out how to feed context from a structured code base into the models in a way that it gets all the context and relationships. But yeah, I think the acceptance rate for Copilot, which is like the biggest code assistance right now, is only about 35%, which is still enough to be useful, but still not anywhere near the point where you don't want somebody trusted reviewing the outputs from that. Great. So I think we're going to wrap up there. I appreciate all the questions, and hopefully this was a useful hour and everybody learned a little bit more. Feel free to kind of get in contact and reach out if you can have more detailed questions, or would be interested in working with myself and our company. Appreciate the time.